All right, welcome back. Yes, we're going to kick off the conversation immediately. I'm joined now from Abuja by Dr. Sam Amadi, a lawyer and a consistent vocalist when it comes to Nigerian issues. Thanks a lot for joining us today, sir. Going straight into it, 21 years since democracy in Nigeria. A two-part question. First of all, how are we doing with regards to human rights since democracy returned, and of course looking back at the way the military handled things? And secondly, if there's an improvement, are we where you think we should be at this point?
Well, thank you very much. I think first question, how we are doing with human rights, I think is half cup, half empty, half full. I would like to say maybe half full. First, we now have an institutionalized human rights framework. The National Human Rights Commission is now a national human rights. In the earlier days of the Civil Liberties Organization, human rights was not a national concern in terms of institutionalized government focus. We had NGOs like the CLO and others doing it as against government. But today, based on existing international protocol and best practices across the world, the Nigerian government incorporated the National Human Rights Commission as the nation's own human rights watchdog. So in a sense, you can say some institutional support for human rights. Again, we've seen also increasing number of human rights, diversification in human rights. We've seen gender right-based organizations. We've seen those who veer into public policy, like some of us did. I've seen those who are doing to development. So you can see greater diversification in the institutional framework for dealing with human rights. But if you look at human rights in terms of observation and observance, in terms of experience, what people have benefited, in terms of respect for these rights, I think you've not done very well. Today, we're talking about the rape being more like a pandemic, and many states have refused to enact laws like the Child Rights Act, Violence Against Women, and several other women equality rights laws. Most of the states have not done so. So essentially, we've not done well on that area. Look at issues around freedom of press, which the Nigerian press has been very, very historic in terms of fighting for democracy and human rights. Even under the military, it was such a great time for the press. Today, we see the press coming under greater and greater onslaught, especially bloggers and social media activists. We've seen people being arrested and unusual resort to terrorism charges against indecent or inconvenient speech. So we've not done much in terms of really expanding the realization and the enjoyment of these essential rights. We've done well in terms of the growth of human rights advocacy. Like I said, moved from a single the political rights and civic right focus to now economic rights, to poverty issues, equality, underrepresentation, gender, and so on. So it's a thriving sector. But in terms of government respect for human rights, in terms of the institutions like the police actually playing by the rule of fair policing, rules against impunity, in the context of even the courts themselves, judiciary, enforcing these rights, we've not done very, very well. We've seen that our processes are still bad. We've not been able to, we've not been able to create a universal and coherent framework for dealing with bail.
Yeah. Sorry to cut you there. I'm very, very particular about the issue of journalism and, the press, which you've talked about. And Nigeria continues to rank very poorly with regards to freedom of speech, or press freedom, I beg your pardon. And 21 years down the line, we've had cases in the past where journalists were blown up in their homes, media organizations were shut down. It looked like, with democracy and the military gone, things like this would be a thing of the past. But like you've said, we still have this happening today where media personalities get missing. Journalists just disappear into thin air or get arrested for certain stories they publish. Why are we still there today?
Well, I think partly because we got into democracy without internalizing the values. It could be, we can call our democracy rushed democracy. I was a counsellor with Chief Gani Fawemi when we started the National Conscience Party, which was actually myself, Chief Gani Fawemi, and Festus Keyamo. And the idea was to force the military to allow for partisan politics. And of course, by 1999, when Obasanjo became president, it's also symbolic that the first Nigerian civilian president after a long period of military rule was a former general. And so there's some argument that perhaps we got the shell without the real thing, in terms of civilian values of democracy. So we left the value, actually. We have built around consolidation. Today, Nigeria is rated as one of the countries that have entered into the stage of consolidation, when we have handed power from one civilian regime to the government to another. But we've not really internalized these values. Again, if you look at, take for example, the press freedom. In the States, there's so much oppression of, bare naked oppression of media. People have been arrested, and the DSS that's supposed to deal with terrorism is not dealing with, considering free speech as the main threat to national development and national security. So I think that's a degeneration in terms of both the quality of the institutions and their response. And of course, this all relate to the failure to internalize the values of democracy, even as we adopted the electoral processes of democracy, the institutions, the National Assembly, or the framework. But the values that define them, even in terms of independence of these institutions, we don't have them. So press freedom becomes, we run more like a prebendal politics. We are client, patron client. The politicians have hijacked the system, and those who are in opposition are now being, they become victim of state terror. So primarily, it's a failure of institution. It is the absence of the effective absence of the values of democracy, and then ability to institutionalize and entrench this value. Again, poverty has also helped to destroy the capacity of people to resist. Right. So you see a pocket of resistance from maybe some civic groups, bloggers, and middle class people. But the most of the Nigerian population as against under military rule, when we had mass-based movement, we could have protests for like weeks, and streets are filled up. Today, people are consumed with the question of poverty. So the leaders have weaponized poverty, and therefore has created little opposition, and so it's easier to target and isolate few of those people who you can call the chattering class.
All right,
so
all right, Dr. Sam Amadi, let me
the failure to institutionalize these values.
Thank you. From one doctor to another, we're joined now by Dr. Joe Oke-Odumaki, of course, who's a human rights activist. And just leading off from what Dr. Sam Amadi has said, there is something I wanted to talk about, which is the issue of protest, and speaking up as Nigerians. There's a constant accusation that this generation seems to be just filled up with keypad warriors, people who can't stand up or take to the streets and fight for their rights. Is this as a result of the fact that what Dr. Sam Amadi has said, that poverty has been weaponized and we are made incapacitated by government, or are we lazy, or has government found a way of just stifling protest these days?
Well, flowing from what Dr. Sam Amadi said, my good friend, there's a relative law followed by abject poverty, where our country has become the headquarters of poverty. But one thing we should also understand, that during the military dictatorship, we had one common enemy where people galvanized. But now, some are into politics, people are into different fields, of endeavor. But more importantly, government must ensure that ambience of peaceful protest is allowed. And it's allowed, because you see that at times people want to come out. In those days, in several years, we practiced pseudo-democracy. Then from pseudo-democracy flowed to dictatorship. Several years of agitation rather than enjoying democracy. So now, although we still have people are not completely cowed, we still have people who engage in protest. But I think that a lot more needs to be done. Now we have come to the time that people should agonize less and organize more. And also in doing that, the government should also have enough political will. The security agencies should be more tolerant and allow people. A lot of people want to come out, they are scarce thief. But we still have people who have been emboldened. And we cannot allow opportunity to continue to thrive if we do not act. Poverty has been used as a strong weapon in making people not to see that in terms of protest, it's not like a 100 meters race. It's going to keep gathering momentum. I mean, if you think about military dictatorship, then that when we have protests, it's not the time that you'll be taking selfie or bullets and maiming and killings. So now we have democracy. So I just want to appeal, to our young ones and others that the transfer now says that every onlooker is either a coward or a traitor. So we cannot continue to be onlookers. We must ensure that when things go bad, we speak up, because our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. That's also
Is it possible that it's time to start rethinking, the way we get across our message to government? There are many people who believe that, protests don't yield any results. I think for a lot of people, the last time we got anything out of a protest might have maybe the Enough is Enough protest, which is over 10 years ago. Most people don't think that we protest, we get shot at and everybody goes back home and government still does what they need to do. Technology is available. Now, are there ways we should start rethinking how we get across to government with our issues?
I think that the age of social media and internet has enabled, when people go out on protest, there's crackdown. But with social media, with internet, people can use other means in reaching out, in carrying out protests, writing petitions, and galvanizing people for change, going to the National Assembly, lobbying, various forms that can be used. We saw what happened during military dictatorship and even June 12. People were so persistent. So the age of social media, I believe that one thing is certain, that when we talk about power, is we have to demand for something before we get it, and it's not on a platter of gold. So there must be that ambience, the security. There must be a level playing ground. Our people, no violence pays at all time. So I think that the social media can be used as a form of campaign in order to, fill the gap in the physical protests that we have. Not to even talk about the era of COVID-19 coronavirus, where gathering and all other things, we endanger other people's lives.
Okay, let me just go back to Dr. Sam Amadi now and just wrap it up. I don't know, are you, Dr. Sam, are you positive? Are you feeling hopeful with the future, with our human rights record currently and where we're headed?
Well, in terms of records, we don't have a good record, but in terms of the consciousness that we are seeing, for example, we've seen the National Human Rights Commission also coming up during this COVID, reporting very well on violations of rights and willing to take action. So those kind of institutional response gives hope. Again, technology has helped a lot. Like she said, we know that naming and shaming is easier, and that's critical for government. No matter how brutal governments are, they don't like to feel to be painted bad. So you have to, if you paint the ugly very dark, it makes them feel frightened. So using social media, using information to change narrative, and of course incentivize good behavior on part of government is helpful. So digital tools enable us to do more with little. Well, the issue about protest, physical protest is very important, because some violations require paralyzing the states in a way that it can really be forced to take decisions. Look at what's going on in the U.S. So in spite of it's been largely peaceful, but because it has lasted too long and it has the optics is very good. So people in public policy are now quickly changing the policies to suit the outcome desired by the people. But if it was only about social media, blogging and tweeting, I doubt if. So at a point, you need to marry two together. And I have hope that with the level of consciousness, with the organizing capacity, and with how technology and science has helped us to organize, to do more with less. With Zoom and all these digital platforms, we can organize easier. We don't need to have billions to get people together. We can create narratives. And with the growth of literature, growth of media, narratives in terms of social issues, social journalism, I think we have hope that maybe we can internalize incentives for those in power to really do good. But the driver of human rights governance are persons who have human rights credentials and who understand the importance of human rights to development. We just hope that our people can elect persons who have those credentials so that they will be naturally attuned to the values and the need for human rights. That's hope, but the records are dismal. That's the point.
Final word now from Joe Dumaki. Same question I asked, but we've talked about poverty and the economics and, of course, politics now. Good governance is tied to poverty and, a better economy. And as long as people are poor, you both seem to agree that people cannot necessarily come out and speak for themselves. How do we get out of this cycle?
I think there must be a change of mindset, determination, and with great zeal and passion, with all those things put in place. Because where determination exists, failure can never dismantle the flag of success. So with determination, with all the things, developed as a nation, poverty and the rest, but if people make up their mind, I'm an incurable optimist. I'm so optimistic that if people decide to put all these ills aside and brace up, they are hopeful, and they see that it's not only today but the future. I'm sure that we'll get to that place where, and I continuously make reference, to June 12th. So our people must never give up. If they learn to embrace, the spirit of June 12th in our daily conduct, it will really impact on our democracy, and they'll be able to brace up and speak against the ills in our society.
Thank you very much, Joe Dumarkin and Dr. Sam Amadi. We'll continue this conversation in the coming years. Hopefully, all of those rankings where we see Nigeria doing really terribly will continue to improve in the ladder. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a break now and be right back. Please don't go away.